Hi there, I'm Budda and you're watching Dr. Guitar, a show for all you guitarists out there. In this week's episode, I'm showing you my process of choosing the right overdrive pedal for the right situation. For me, there's no rules, anything can work. You can have all cheap Behringer pedals and they can work for you, as I'm sure they will. It's really a matter of how you play guitar, what guitar you play, which amp you play. So in today's episode, I'm trying to show you some rules of thumb to help you think about the process, not to let you know exactly what to do. That's only up to you. I have here a selection of some of my favorite normal overdrives, so standard overdrives. I have a lot more overdrives that I like, but they are not easy to find. They are not usual. So here are some of the usual suspects. The usual of the usual of the usual is the tube screamer, because it's the standard of standards. It's like the SM58 for guitar players. The OCD is another super standard, a little more modern pedal, but another super standard pedal. Then the Soul Food is a cheap, let me put it in this way, it's an inexpensive overdrive that is on many top players' pedal boards. The OD3 is a classic. I used it for a long time, and the King of Tone is the King of Tone. It's how it says. If I had to choose one, even right before I started playing them, it would be the King of Tone. I have two King of Tones and a Prince of Tone. So I really love this pedal. This is really transparent. It doesn't affect your tone. It can be boosty, it can be compressing, but you can really tailor it. It will never change your tone too much. It will give you a little gain and a little compression and volume, a lot of volume. But sometimes that's not what you need. So sometimes the tube screamer is your best friend. I never liked tube screamers on their own. I think tube screamers are the classic boost pedal. They take you to the next level. So you already need to have things in a certain level. So if you are playing a super reverb already cranked and on a great way, so you can play leads like if I have my overdrive channel on the Lone Star, which is not super overdrive. So let's put it this way. I have my Lone Star with the two channels, so a clean channel. Okay, clean channel. My overdriven channel, which is a little boosty. Okay, I have my basic two tones. A little overdriven. If I dig in, it's a little more. It allows me to solo with not much sustain, and I have a clean tone. So an overdrive would be the perfect next step. Why? Because I would have the clean channel with an overdrive, the clean channel without the overdrive, the dirty channel without the overdrive, and the dirty channel plus the overdrive. So I would have four tones with just an addition of another pedal. The Tube Screamer is a great pedal on this. I already told you in the beginning, if I could only choose one pedal, it would be the King of Tone, for sure. I would never doubt it, because it sounds incredible and it's two pedals in one. So I double the choices. I can have one pedal set for the clean channel, another pedal set for the overdrive channel, or if I only play a single channel amp, or if I only play on the clean channel, I can have clean channel plus the overdrive side, clean channel plus the overdrive side, and the clean boost side. So I have a lot more options, and it sounds killer. If it only had one side, I would even then prefer the King of Tone. It's my favorite overdrive of all time. But the Tube Screamer is great when allowing you to be on top of the mix. Why? Because it cuts your bottom end. So your tone gets, instead of being like this, it gets like this. So you become a mountain. And that's what you want to stick out. You don't want to be a big elephant covering all the band. You want to be sharp and to get people's attention. You want to be taller, you want to be higher, you want to get out of spam, not be big and cover all the band. So the Tube Screamer is great for that. Have a listen. The Lone Star with a little overdrive on the amp. With the Tube Screamer. And here, the Tube Screamer is cranking up, is overdriving more the overdrive in the amp. So it's like being before the overdrive. But usually how I like to use it is after all my drives. That's why in this row of pedals, the Tube Screamer is at last. And I will show you how. Let's listen to all the overdrives. I'm not trying to compare the overdrives in a way that this is better or worse. I just want you to listen to how different they sound in character. I try to set them almost all to the same gain, but they have very different EQ settings and very different functions. Let's start with the OCD on the clean channel, so clean channel as a reference. Okay, so immediately I hear the King of Tone it doesn't sound like a pedal. It seems like my amp is a little more overdriven. It sounds like my overdriven channel on the amp, which is a tube signal path, all tube signal path. And this is just transistors and it sounds killer. The OD3 has a lot of bass, really big bass. So I used this combination, OD3 going into the Analog Man. The Analog Man was my always on and the OD3 was before it, as it is now, to push it. But I was playing through my Twin Reverb, which is a super, did I mention super? Clean amp. Whatever you put into it, it gets louder and louder. It never compresses. So I needed the King of Tone to get a little compression, a little give on the amp. Otherwise, I would be playing like, and then it would almost sound like this in a mix. You would only hear the pick, and no note. So I needed the king of tone to give me a little roundness to the tone. You hear it almost doesn't sound like an overdrive. That's what I expect from it. I spend a lot of time not playing clean ever. I learned how to play clean, and when I want clean. It's just in very special occasions, if I want to play jazzy chords. Because with the king of tone, for example, it gets a little too much and messy. You don't hear all the notes. For this, I need the clean. Because the king of tone kind of, every time you use an overdrive, it kind of blends in the note, it cuts off the detail. To me, an overdrive is great when you want to spank the guitar and when you want to sound like Frusciante, for example. Because Frusciante, although he used clean amps a little loud, let's say it, probably a little too loud, and he compresses in the studio. The guitar is mic'd up, and then you have a compressor. So the sound you hear in the record is not exactly the sound he was playing in the room. It's the interaction of the amp, the speaker, the mic, the preamp, and then the compressor, and the compressor in the mix. So it's probably even more compressed. So in order for me to get that tone right out of the amp, I needed to compress a little, and I need to feel it. I need to push, to play hard, and the amp sets a little back. Otherwise, let's compare it. This is louder, even, and you are listening on YouTube, so YouTube is already compressing. But it is what it is. So I used a lot. This is my clean tone. This is my little overdrive tone. And this was my rhythm tone. I could even play rock stuff like. So this could be my rhythm tone. Then I would engage the overdrive, the OD3, and it gets bigger for solos. You get it? This is how I use it. A great way to stand out in a mix is to use a mid-bump overdrive pedal, like the Tube Screamer, like the Soul Food. The OD3, the King of Tone, and the OCD are a little scooped in tone to my ears, probably because they all have a lot of bass, except the King of Tone, which is really neutral. It sounds like an amp. It's why Analog Man designed it, and it sounds like an amp on a great place, on a great volume that you can never play because it's too loud usually. But if I have this kind of tone and I boost this tone with a Tube Screamer after it, so my King of Tone is going into this Tube Screamer, which is very different than the OD3 going into the King of Tone. Let's compare the difference between having the King of Tone on as my normal overdrive, then boosting it afterwards with the Tube Screamer, which is kind of the same as the clean boost on the King of Tone, because this side is set to a clean, so it's not overdriving. But the difference between this and this is that the Tube Screamer filters the bottom end a little, and this is more transparent in a way that it doesn't enhance or cuts anything. And boosting the King of Tone with the OD3. So as a reminder, here we are with just the King of Tone into the clean channel of the Lone Star. Let's boost it with the OD3. And just the OD3 on its own. Almost no drive, but together with the King of Tone, so without it, this was how I usually used it, because I had the second side of the King of Tone to boost it in volume, but the OD3 was giving me a little more bass, a little more volume, a little more distortion, because I was pushing the King of Tone. But I was using the King of Tone for rhythm, for chord playing. And the OD3 for riff. Without the OD3. Because usually a thing that people don't think about when thinking about overdrives is that chords have a lot more information than single notes. So when you're playing chords, it's very different than when you're playing single notes. The more complex harmonies you play on the guitar, the less drive you should play. And of course, this is my approach. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a different opinion. But when I play things like AC/DC, I don't need a lot of distortion. This is enough. I will need a little more drive when I'm playing single notes, like, so I can get a little more sustain and more meat. So this is where this comes in. And this is how I usually think about overdrives. This is why I really love the King of Tone, because with the King of Tone I can do kind of the same thing. Although I'm doing it in a different manner, the result is the same. With the tube screamer after the King of Tone, what I get is a little more height, a little more definition, volume, and cut through the mix, a little less bass. So here it is. Hear the amount of bass that I lose in this G note. And on its own, it doesn't sound like a great thing. But within a band, when the drums kick in and the bass kick in and everybody's lifting up, this will lift you up. I'm actually thinking on my flight pedal board, where I have an MVO Budda font, which is kind of a clone of the ZVEX Host Factory. Well, it's more like the Mammoth, but kind of the same thing. I always have trouble with that pedal cutting through the mix. It's super loud, it makes a lot of noise, but when the band kicks in, I feel I'm buried in the mix. So I'm trying to figure out if I could use the Tube Screamer together with it. I will test it and I will let you know. But the Tube Screamer is a great pedal for that thing. I have the gain at minimum, level at max, almost at max, and tone almost at max. So it's bright, it's cutting through the mix, but it's not adding a lot of drive. And the Tube Screamer is great, especially with Fender amps that are a little scoop. It adds a little mid-range, like it marshalizes the Fenders. That's how I used it with my twin reverb. First, before I have the King of Tone, I always use the Vox Valve Tone, which is kind of a Tube Screamer pedal. It was the last pedal in chain, so it was marshalizing my twin. Okay, let's tweak the tone knob so we can find a little, because at this moment with a tone knob like this, it sounds like I have the wah-wah turned on the on position. Yeah, somewhere like this. But there's something about the Tube Screamer that never kicks me in. It always sounds like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I don't want to sound like him. I don't want to sound like anyone. But this is kind of, I hear the pedal. I stop playing guitar and playing Tube Screamer. And it turns me off a little bit. I know it's useful. For some people it's perfect. To me, there's always something that's not there. The Clone Centaur, or the Soul Food, which is this is based in, it's a different overdrive, and let's hear it The OCD does the same strange thing to me. It's very compressed, no pick attack. It's always too bassy, too dark for me. But turned into the soul food afterward, it makes it pop. Here's the OCD. Turning on the soul food. Okay, so the same principle. I'm having the OCD with my drive, muscle drive, and then after the OCD, I'm having a cleaner pedal. So listen, this is the clean tone with the soul food. It's almost just louder. Of course, overdriving the amp a little bit because it's louder. But if I put the OCD, I have a lot of drive. With the soul food. Just makes it bigger, not more distorted. It just does something. This is why the Tube Screamer and the Soul Food are such revered pedals, because they do this really well. Let's try to figure out if the OD3 does the same thing with the gain all down. OCD. The OD3 is a lot more compressed, so I like it more as a push into another drive than as a lift from another drive. So this episode, as I told you, is not about showing you how all the pedals sound like on their own, because they sound like this with this guitar and this amp, and if I try another guitar, it will sound completely different. That's not the point. If I change amps, they will sound completely different, and one would be more appropriate than other. The only pedal that always sounds good to me is the King of Tone. It's the tone shaping is very versatile. If the amp is blowing off too much, you just brighten the tone. It makes it louder, and then you back off the volume, you compensate, and it gets kind of less bottom-endy. The OD3 only sounds good in some situations. The Tube Screamer always sounds like a Tube Screamer, which to me is a bummer. The Soul Food, it's dependent because it has a lot of bass. Sometimes it creeps up the amp. It doesn't lift the volume. The OCD is a pedal I'm figuring out. It's too compressed for me, and I use it on HP, which is the kind of the high pressure or high definition, lot more transient. It sounds good. I love to hear people playing with the OCD, but it's strange. It has something in the low mid-range to me. And this is why I made this episode, because I was picking and choosing overdrives from my different bands and different pedal boards, and I always end up choosing some kind of different drive. The King of Tone is incredible for the versatility. The Osnoy edition, the ACRC Exotic, is another one that I really love. Very different from the King of Tone, but very great too, very versatile. And then the Soul Food and the Tube Screamer are kind of problem solvers. One or the other, would do the thing. So I'm really wondering how the tube screamer will sound with the ZVEX after the ZVEX. So it will filter out the stupid amount of low end that pedal has, and that makes it not cut through the mix as I wish, and it would give it a little bump in the mid-range. It will give it a little bump in volume too. I'm thinking it will work great, better than the Soul Food, but the Soul Food would be a serious candidate to that. And then the Soul Food could always be an always-on pedal, because it sounds very natural, just bigger, fatter. Here's the difference between the Soul Food and the Tube Screamer. So, almost no drive. Here's the low end. So here's your answer. And this is the reason why people like Hudson Electronics are making the broadcast with a low-pass filter. Well, with the high-pass filter. So you're cutting lows. You're not cutting highs. The highs are preset. You're cutting lows. And when you're cutting lows, you're getting less bottom end, and it starts to be a lot more focused. That's one of my favorite drives too. It's not an overdrive. It's a different thing. But it does the same thing, which is great for guitar. Well, that's it. I hope you liked the show. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you haven't done it yet, by some very strange reason, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notified. It's a simple way to support the channel, just by adding to the subscription number. It's just by subscribing, you're telling me and other people that you like what we're doing here, you like the channel, and we can do better things for you in the future. So thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for all your support. We'll see each other next week. Bye-bye.